My name is Vernnena Staab, Des Moines, Washington, 9. Criminal court corruption, guardianship abuse, and corruption. My name is Vernnena Staab. I'm from Seattle, Washington, and I am here to talk about the corruption and guardianship corruption in the American system. My husband was murdered in 1960 by millionaires, and the records were sealed, and my children were entitled to college education. My son was denied it, and he was sent to Vietnam. He was a very kind person. He played second violin in the symphony orchestra. He had good grades, and the VA denied him his education. He went to Vietnam, and he came back. He had a severe case of post-traumatic stress. They sent him over twice, and he pleaded with me to do something. I told him to put in for a sole surviving son, which he did. When he got out of the military, he was very depressed, and he could get no help for PTSD. He got a gun and put a bullet in his brain and tried to kill himself. Eventually, I went back and fought and got him $140,000. By this time, they appointed him a guardian, and the infamous judge was Judge Anderson of Tacoma. Then he appointed the guardian, Attorney Colby Parks. I believe he was 2 years out of law school, had no training in traumatic brain injury, had no training in post-traumatic stress. They put him in Steilacoom mental hospital for 17 months, and his pension was depleted down to $200. I tried to hire an attorney to get rid of the guardian, and I found that that was an impossibility. And out of desperate, I went to California, and I hired Chase Law Group, who was supposed to be the best in the West. I found out they were the best in the West for stealing a person's money. They charged me $50,000. I paid them $20,000 down, and so much a month until the $50,000 was paid. Chase Law Group was in California on Sunset Drive at Studio City, California. They refused to talk to me because they said that I was not their client, that Rex was their client. Rex had some very serious issues. He was accused of sex abuse 3 times. The manager's children, they stood out in front of his apartment and shook their genitals. They killed the squirrels he fed. They attacked his car. They threatened to accuse him of sex abuse, which they did. He had a cross burned on his step. He had consistent telephone calls at night. He was so fearful that he said, the only time I go to the store is after dark. I talked to the store, and they said he'd come in around 11 o'clock midnight because he was threatened that some guys from the military base would plan to kill him. um, his wife was having a relationship when they were in Okinawa, and the commander of the base knew of this relationship. The prostitutes in Okinawa were pretty much free. They met at the barber shop, and when one of their husbands went over for other duty away from Okinawa, then they would meet at that house for their desired experiences. And anyway, Rex did not know a lot about this, because when he was in Okinawa, he was working 12 hours a day. But I would like to know if there's anything that can be done with this guardianship. The guardianship corruption is beyond anything that you can ever mention. The last time I was in court, I was walking down the street and I looked down and I saw this woman. I walked in and I said, I'm pro se in court tomorrow morning. I do not know what I'm going to say. Do you think you could help me? And she says, no, she says, I'm too busy. She hesitated, turned and looked at me and said, what is it about? I said, a guardianship. She said, for $200, I'll be there. I handed her $200. She came the next morning, and Colby Parks was in the courtroom, and he had the Attorney General Weinkauf there, and he got a hold of Weinkauf, and Weinkauf come off of a hunting experience he was having, and she kept saying, I don't know where all this money is. Where did all this money go? And it went on and on like that. And finally the judge said, Colby Parks, do you know these are federal funds and nothing is, and so anyway, nothing. And when we walked out of court, I looked at her and I said, you're fired, right in front of Colby. And the reason I did this was because I was fearful for her life, because she was vicious in that courtroom. She did not lay, and so then that was in '98, I believe, and in 2000, then they switched over to another guardian. Attorney Neal was also one of the guardians, and he, in court one day, I was in court, and he said to the judge, the first thing, we've got to stop this. We've got to stop her. She will not stop. She keeps on going. We've got to stop her. And the judge looked at me, and I believe it was $5,000. He 4 or 5,000. Anyway, I settled for $2,000 cash with Neal to stop the fine that I was assessed on me, because these assessments are very, very serious. Anyway, right now, I had a call. My son is in prison, and he finally completely cracked. And one of the head guys in Olympia told me that Rex needed an attorney. I cannot afford an attorney. The attorneys, they have complete control of the money. He has about $1,000, I believe, $1,100 a month, and they put $100, $110 into his prison account, and I deposit $500 a month. After the hearing, they started to put in, I believe, $200. This is, everything is confidential, and it's only when kind people tell me what's going on that I find out what's going on. All the records at Pierce County, all the records on Rex, everything is sealed. Everything. I went in to get the records, and there was a woman there, and she told the clerks, you do not show her one thing. I went in one time to get them, and the one clerk looked at the other and says, these don't look like the records. Are these records sealed? And finally they both said, no, sealed. No. Finally, they both talked back and forth and decided that these records aren't sealed. Give it to her, because there was no one around. And that day I got to look at the records. But I was unprepared. I didn't have pencil and paper, and I did get some copies, but not that much. And that was the last time I got into the records to even see what was going on in those records. And I couldn't remember half of it because I had to get the records back to the desk because in case someone else come in. But all the records are sealed on Rex. All the records are sealed on his dad. And that's the situation.